Sandy Anderson from the Himalayan Institute here. It's the nature of all of our minds to be busy. We're either running out into the world around us, looking for opportunities, or looking for threats to avoid, or the mind rummages in the past, or it's imagining things in the future, or it's sleeping. Even that is considered to be a modification of the mind, sort of a busyness in the mind where we may not be conscious, but the mind is still active. So cognitions and memory and reasoning and discrimination and planning and imagination, these are all vrittis in the yoga tradition. They're the way the mind keeps itself active. It's the nature of the mind to be constantly flowing, to be moving in all different directions or in whatever direction gets its attention. And the way in which the mind is moving is configured by our individual conditioning of our mind. So all of that is useful to us for the most part, but the yoga tradition also tells us that there are potentials of the mind that are not available to us as long as we are operating within the confines of these conditions, this conditioning of our personal mind. So all this busyness in the mind keeps us from being able to tap into the deeper potential of the mind, the power or the wellspring that empowers all of these activities of the mind, and which is full of intuition and creativity and joyfulness and wisdom and incredible powers that are completely out of reach as long as we remain trapped in this finite and superficial aspects of our outward-looking mind. The yoga tradition also tells us that the way to reach or into those powers, to unlock the potential of our minds, is to create a stillness, to attenuate what we would call the roaming tendencies of the mind, the vrittis, the aforementioned categories of mental activity, cognition and memory and reasoning and imagination, etc. If we can quiet those and stabilize an inner state of stillness that allows us to create a one-pointed, focused, inward-looking mind, then we can tap into this deeper potential in the mind. So how do we do that becomes the question for us. And the Hatha Yoga tradition, one thing we might think about is what's causing this finite aspect of our mind to be so busy all the time, and what can we do about it? The Hatha Yoga tradition tells us that there are two causes of Citta, which is this mind we've been talking about, and they are Vasanas, those deep-seated inclinations, the deep-seated personal conditioning of the mind, habits, desires, etc., and Vayu. And Vayu is word meaning wind. We might also be more familiar with that concept with the term prana. So this is the power in the mind. This is the propulsion that's driving all of the activities of the mind, Vayu. And Vayu and Vasana are interrelated. It's Vayu that stirs up Vasana and then motivates all the activities in both the body and the mind. And it's Vasana that shapes the way prana or Vayu, the life force itself, is configured in the body and mind. So they're very much intertwined. The tradition then also tells us that if we change one, either Vasana or Vayu, the other is automatically influenced. And that makes sense when you've just seen how intertwined they are. So if we learn to stabilize and control Vayu, then our Vasanas are also quieted, stabilized, integrated, put on hold at least. And if we stabilize or control or master our vasanas, then the vayu becomes balanced and also lined up with this deeper potential of the mind. So, vasana or vayu, one or the other, it controls the other. And then the third thing that the Hatha Yoga tradition tells us is that we should control vayu first. That we learn to master vayu, we learn to use the way the life force is operating to begin to train the mind, to train these aspects of the mind that tend to be busy and at the mercy of our conditioning, and that keep us, therefore, from having lined up with the deeper sense of the potentials in the mind. So now the question is, how do we begin to manage vayu? And that, of course, is where we come to the practice of Hatha Yoga, where we work with the body and the breath, where we work with the energy of the body and the breath, to create a balanced, integrated state of that we experience as a deep stillness that allows the mind to become one-pointed and to move deeper into alignment with the full potential of the mind. That, of course, leads us to understand that working with the breath is particularly powerful because the breath is the most sensitive expression of the way the prana is actually operating in the body and mind. So prana is not a physical energy, but it is configuring and driving all of the physical experiences, including the breath. And this is a great discovery of yoga as well, that if we can begin to shape and work with the breath, we also are shaping with the life force, with pranavayu. And that, of course, gives us access to the vasanas, that superficial aspect of the mind. And having caught hold of that thread, we get to the deeper, the more strong rope of the pranic body. And that, having worked and managed and configured and integrated and trained that part of ourselves, we are at the same time working with this aspect of the mind that's distorted or out of alignment with our deeper self. So, two causes of all of our mental fluctuations, Vasana and Vayu. Change one, you change the other. And the one that is easy enough to start with is working with Vayu. And we do that by working with the practices that we already may know or at least have good access to, and that would be asana and pranayama, breath training. And from there, we have the potential to open up into a greater expanded sense of mind and self that brings us intuition, creativity, joy, vitality.